One, two, three, four.
You are listening to SKYLIT, the SKYLIT Books podcast. SKYLIT Books is a general interest bookstore in the Los Feliz neighborhood in Los Angeles. You can shop with us from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. or visit us online 24/7 at skylitbooks.com. Follow along at SKYLIT Books Instagram and Twitter. You can subscribe to the podcast on Podbean, iTunes, and Spotify. Thank you for listening, and now on to the episode.
All right. Hello, lovely listeners. Welcome back to the SKYLIT Books podcast series. My name is Maddie Gobo, and I am the events manager here at SKYLIT Books in Los Angeles. We are open right now, and our hours are changing, so keep an eye on our socials at SKYLIT Books or check out our website, skylitbooks.com, for the latest intel. We're so glad to be welcoming folks into the store, and now masks are optional, so whatever your comfort level is, we would love to see either the top half of your face or your entire face. Come on by and shop with us. All right, so today we have a fantastic conversation. We're going to be talking about the new book, He Came In With It, A Portrait of Motherhood and Madness by Miriam Feldman. She's going to be in conversation with one of our neighborhood favorites, Jennifer Pastiloff. I want to give them their full introductions in just a moment, but first, a few words about the book. So, He Came In With It, A Portrait of Motherhood and Madness. It's written by Miriam Feldman. She's a celebrated artist in Los Angeles whose idyllic life was uprooted when her son was diagnosed with schizophrenia. In her tireless search for help and answers, she learns about the shocking shortfalls of our mental health system and the destructive impact of mental illness stigma, shame, and isolation. He Came In With It reveals how one mother's struggle to help her son created for her a new definition of family, forgiveness, and forging ahead with no false facades. Miriam Feldman is an artist, writer, and mental health activist who splits her time between her Los Angeles studio and her farm in rural Washington state. She has been married to her husband, Craig O'Rourke, also an artist for 34 years, and they have 4 adult children. Their 33-year-old son, Nick, has schizophrenia. With an MFA in painting from Otis Art Institute, Miriam founded DeMar Feldman Studios, Inc., a distinguished mural and decorative art company, in 1988. At the same time, she built a strong career as a fine artist, represented by Hamilton Galleries in Santa Monica, California. When Nick was diagnosed in 2004, Miriam became an activist and a writer. With firsthand knowledge of our mental health system, she decided to be an advocate for those who have no voice. She serves on the advisory board of Bring Change to Mind, the nonprofit founded by Glenn Close, and writes a monthly blog for their website. Miriam is active in leadership at NAMI Washington and writes for their newsletters. She is a frequent guest on mental health podcasts and is active on Instagram, where she has created a community of family and loved ones dealing with mental illness. In conversation with Miriam today, we have Jen Pastiloff. Jen Pastiloff is an author, public speaker, coach, and creator of the Shame Loss Movement and course. She is the best-selling author of On Being Human. Cheryl Strayed, author of Wild, calls Pastiloff a conduit of awakenings, and Kiesa Lehman calls her a heart magician. She has been featured on the cover of Yoga Journal and in Good Morning America, Shape Magazine, New York Magazine, Health Magazine, and more. Jen is the founder of the literary website, The Manifest Station, with editor Angela Giles. You can find her weekly live chats on Mind, as well as her podcast with Alicia Easter called What Are You Bringing? She's deaf without her hearing aids and reads lips. She's currently working on her second book. You can book her for speaking through Lyceum Agency and private coaching or retreats through her website. All right, so Miriam and Jen, welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy to have you today. And Miriam, I believe you're going to start us off with a short reading. Is that right?
Yes, I am. Hello, we're so happy to be here. I'm going to read a part, just to set it up a bit. Right before the part I'm going to read you, I was in a NAMI meeting, which is the National Alliance for Mental Illness, which was kind of a family support meeting. And this was at the very beginning of the whole process when I was still trying to figure it out. Actually, I still am trying to, but back then it was even harder. Okay. After the exercise, we did some sharing. A very sweet old couple next to me recounted the circumstances of the past week. Their 47-year-old son was still living on their condominium balcony under a wrought iron decorative table they had bought to sit at and enjoy their morning coffee. It had been 3 years, and he showed no signs of leaving. LaTanya was still hanging in there with a boyfriend. He was getting violent and had started throwing things. In the middle of the night, he'd wake up screaming. Once awake, it didn't stop because it wasn't a dream. It was the madness. Every week, I fought the impulse to take her aside and tell her to get out of the relationship. David, the overweight IT guy, whose mother and sister have schizophrenia, was a little depressed that week. That week? My sense of humor had begun to wane. I looked at the sad, faded blue shirt that matched his eyes and imagined that what it would be like to be him. You couldn't even consider having children because of the genetics. And what woman would sign up for that, aside from LaTanya? All he does is go to work and then try to control the damage every day. The door opened and a woman peeked in. Behind her was her son. He was large, scrubbed, and nicely dressed. She was small, round, and precisely made up. It was clearly the big day. She had gotten him to come. She was nothing like me. She was wearing a suit and pearls and had a hairdo. I was crouched in my chair wearing jeans and sporting messy, paint-spattered hair. But I knew her all right. I sure did. She was exactly like me. That same hopeful expression, was this going to be the place that improved things? That ridiculous putting a good face on it determination. This mother holding the pieces of her broken heart in her own hands. An organ busted so recklessly, so raggedly, that the shards in turn cut her, the very hands that were holding it together. Oh, I knew her. Walking to my car after the meeting, I couldn't remember what there ever was in the entire world to be amused by. I felt myself harden against the sorrow welling up inside. The sharp little tip of the car door licked the skin on my cheek as I yanked it open. That teeny prick of pain was enough. It tore me apart. I sat in the car and railed at the night sky. Where are you? What are you doing while my son is going mad? Where's my mother? Where's my father? Fuck you. Fuck you and the big fat faith all you believers cling to. If it's true, then where the hell are you? I screamed. Where are you? I wiped my cheek with the back of my hand, saw a faint line of blood. My mother told me that my hands were touched by you. That was why I could paint. I go into the colors and the movement, and there I know myself, and there I lose myself, and then there I find myself. So thanks for that, the painting thing. But how about I give that back to you and you give Nick back to me? I'll never paint again. Just please, please give me back my son. The previous week's meeting had been all about violence and the horrible things that mentally ill people sometimes do to others. The data shows that quite often others means mom. I now understand those women who go foolishly into situations of grave danger because they trust their child will know them and would never hurt them. You see it on the news all the time. She thinks, he'll come to his senses. He'll look into my eyes and he will stop. We don't believe that they will ever harm us. Then out comes the gun, the knife, the icy clench of strong fingers around her throat, and it's too late. Okay, kind of a grim beginning, but I promise you there's lots of laughs in this book as well.
Oh, it's so beautiful. So is this where I hop in, or it's all right? So Miriam Feldman, I am kind of like your stalker now. You are my favorite artist, and I mean that not just as a fine artist. Is that what you call painting? Visual artist? No, what do we
Yeah,
call that? Fine,
you can call it
but
that.
writer as well, and human. um, I see the painting behind you as the one I have in my house now.
Mm.
Yeah. So, yeah, thank you for that. And I really hope that everyone reads this book, and your way of expressing yourself is so moving and poetic. Again, not just with your writing, but with your painting. So, thank you for that. All right. So, speaking of painting, I own three Mimi Feldman paintings. One of them is a copy, but the other two are OGs. So you've been a painter your whole life. Tell us about the book. Like, how did this? I'm going to write a book now. What's that about?
Well, it's interesting how that came about. You know, when all of this started with Nick, it really turned our world upside down. You know, serious mental illness, it's like a gale force hurricane that just blows through your life.
Yeah.
And anything that's not nailed down is just gone. So there were many years where I really didn't know what side was up. I was basically just doing damage control all the time. But in the back of my mind, I had this feeling that I wanted to tell this story. And as the years went by and I experienced the isolation and the loneliness and the marginalization that this particular life circumstance brings to you, I felt more and more committed to it. I wanted the story to be there for other moms, most specifically, because that's what I am, but really just for people, just to shine a light, just to make it.
But had you written? I mean, I remember when I first met you in the workshop with Lydia Yuknovich, and you told me you were an artist, and then you opened your mouth and read something you wrote, and I was like, holy smokes. Yeah, I don't know if SKYLIT cares if I curse, so I won't. But did you know you could write? Had you written?
Well, you know, I wrote in college, I wrote some short stories in my life, but painting was always my driving force. But then life basically handed me a story that I could not tell with paint.
Yes.
So I figured I had to write.
Wow,
So
I just got full body chills. Life handed me a story that I could not say with paint, because that was my next question. If you're an artist, I've seen you, all your paintings are phenomenal. You could have been like, I'm gonna tell this story through paint, but you just said that.
I still haven't painted him. You know, there's a little aside story is at one point in the beginning, he overdosed and took all his medication. And he almost died. And we were in the hospital, and this was like late 90s, 2000s or something. You know, we had little flip phones, and he was in the hospital, and he was hooked up to the machine, breathing for him with the charcoal filter, pumping his stomach.
Jesus,
and I looked at him and I realized I hadn't taken a picture of him in a couple of years, and he was 19, and he was different than he was. And what if he dies? And I don't know. So I managed to figure it out, and I took some pictures of him in that hospital bed. And later I tried to paint them, and I couldn't do it. I mean, it was just too much for me. And so I painted over them, and they're out there in the world, sold to other people as other paintings. Only I know what's underneath. But I really still haven't. And we're 20 years into this.
Yeah.
One day.
Maybe, or maybe not, right?
Or maybe not, exactly.
I've been doing a lot of work lately around shame, and I created a thing called shame loss. Instead of weight loss, let's talk shame loss. And I find being a woman, there's a lot around age, and like, I mean, I suppose men have this too, but I'm a woman. So, but kind of like a sell by date or whatever it is. So I love you published your book. How old were you? 63 or 4?
I think it came out, I was 63 or 64.
Okay.
I was 64. Yeah.
And that's inspiring, because I think a lot of people tell themselves a story that it's too late, or, or I've been a painter my whole life. I can't do this. And I always say, you get to change your mind, and you're also on your own damn timeline. And I've always wanted to talk to you about that because I've wanted to interview for my next book called You're Right on Time because you're such a beautiful example of that.
Well, I have all the same stuff we all have, looking at the wrinkles and the this and the that and thinking, oh my God, what's happening to me? But I just sort of, that ship has sailed at this point. Now I'm 65, but even as I was going through it, I just sort of acknowledge that and go along anyway. I don't know if I had spectacular parents or it's the way that I'm wired, but I just never felt that there's anything I can't just do at any given time.
God,
and
I
that
love
the
it.
worst thing that could happen is I fail.
What if we all had that? Imagine, seriously,
Yeah.
I think it's when we hear people say that, yeah, it's like, wow, what parents you must have had or what, because it's more the anomaly, I think.
Yeah, I have a friend that calls it informed naivete, which is
Ooh,
that.
I like that.
Isn't that great?
Yes.
Mimi, you're the poster girl for informed naivete.
I kind of am too. I love that.
I know the odds are low, but I go ahead anyway. And I mean, I fail too. I fail sometimes, I succeed sometimes, but it's like, it doesn't kill you.
But I also think I find myself when you say, I know the odds are low, I want to go, says who? It's like someone made up all these rules and it's up to us to keep rejecting them.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? And going, no.
The naivete part of it is, once I got into trying to sell my book, I had already written it. I'd already spent a year and I had 400 and some odd pages. I'd written the damn book. If I had started the selling process before, I might have been deterred because I was really told, forget about it. You're a 60 plus woman. Nobody's ever heard of you. Memoir is the hardest thing in the world to sell. And mental illness is depressing.
But
I didn't know all that.
But you did it anyway. You're just remarkable. So I want to talk about expectations and disappointments, specifically around publishing a book. I mean, look, I published my book a year before yours, and so many expectations I didn't realize I had and disappointments. But yours came out in COVID, and I can imagine it's like, I finally got my shot, in quotes, because it's not like you're not dead yet. That's not your only shot. And then this pandemic hit. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit that was a bitter pill to swallow, even for old Energizer bunny me. I mean, I'm a confident person, and and I can take failure and I can take blows, but I was really excited about this because I'm a person who's never been the belle of the ball on stage, the person talking. And I had envisioned, I could see myself at Powell's with Lydia in conversation, sitting at that wooden desk, signing the book. It was going to be so much fun. And none of that happened. So I just changed gears and I went full throttle at what I could do, which was, Zoom meetings and things like that. And it went well. And the book is a success and lots of people have read it. And so at the end of the day, the only thing I didn't get was the party, the fun thing.
Yeah.
But I'm really proud of the book, and the book has really done the thing that I wanted it to do. And that's what
which is what?
It's touched people. I mean, I get letters all the time.
Yep.
Especially mothers, but all kinds of people saying, oh my God, finally, I'm hearing a voice that sounds like my own. I'm hearing an experience that is my experience. Nobody has ever done that before. Because, with mental illness, especially serious mental illness, it's ugly. You know what I mean? There's nothing romantic or pretty or exciting about this, except exciting in a bad way. It's an ugly thing, and it's a hard thing, and it devastates families. And to talk about it, it seems that a lot of times, a lot of the books and things that I've read, they kind of sugarcoat it. It's kind of a Hallmark card version, or it's very technical. And when I started,
or it's very what? What was the second
technical.
thing?
So when I sat down to write this book, I said to myself, okay, this is only going to have any meaning if you tell the truth.
Yep.
And
You're giving a master class right now, by the way, in like memo writing. I hope everyone's taking notes.
well, I do, and I'm a person who, and you'll read in the book, even throughout the experience of it, I did a lot of hiding and lying and bullshitting and pretending. And I realized in the experience of writing the book, the only way it made sense was if I was honest. Now, that's not to say I've told everybody everything.
I mean, come on. I know. I say that
Yeah.
all the time. It's like, does that even need to be said? But I guess it does, especially in our day and age with social media. But it just means, right, at least for me, that I won't hide.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And my thing with this is I'm telling my experience of this story, but it's really Nick's story, my son's story.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to be careful to tell the story in a way that respected him and the rest of my family too.
Yeah.
And so there are things, honestly, Jen, there are things that I've witnessed. There are things that I've been part of with Nick and this illness that I have never and will never utter to another person. Not my husband, his father, not anybody, because it's too awful. And I don't want to give it life.
Look, my nephew has a rare genetic disorder and autism and various other things. It's not schizophrenia, but I 100% understand what you're saying and nodding in solidarity. I wanted to talk about something you just said, which was, it was Nick's story and I wanted to be respectful and for the rest of my family. So how did you navigate that? And because it is often hard deciding, well, which is my story to tell and which is theirs. And also Nick being okay with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a lot. The first thing I decided, and this is what really informed me and helped me in writing a book, was I've been an art maker my whole life.
Yeah.
So I know what it's like to sustain an endeavor. I know what it's like to sit alone in a room for hours and days and weeks and months and sustain making a thing. So I didn't have a problem with that. So I made a deal. So I didn't need reinforcement. I didn't need to read it to anybody. So I made a deal with myself that I was going to just sit down and write it and nobody was going to see it until I was done with it. And so I did, I went in every day. I was up here in my house in Washington and it was winter and it's cold and rainy here. And I just went in like my job every morning at 9 o'clock and I wrote from 9 to 5. And at the end of 6 months, I had 400 pages. And then I started addressing what's in there. How do I deal with it? But I just felt that it had to be just me and the paper putting it out there. And so then
back to the idea that this is a class in memoir writing. I'm not even kidding. I hope when they market this, they write that because that's, I think so many people get in their head. Mm-hmm. The editor comes out before and they're like, oh, I shouldn't say this or they're going to get mad, where you're like, no, I just dumped it all out. Then.
Yeah, because otherwise you just get in your own way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in a way, I feel like I was ahead of the game. I was, in a sense, an experienced writer because I was just experienced in making art. It's the only thing I've ever done. I mean, since I could hold something in my hand, it was a paintbrush. Right. And so now it was figuratively a pencil. And so that made it much easier. And so then once it was written, then I went into the whole process of editing. And, I first hired a mutual friend of ours, Samantha Dunn, who's a wonderful writer and coach and editor. And she read it and helped me edit it and basically sat down with me in a Starbucks in Orange County one day and said, look, this is not a book. This is expository writing. You're just saying this happened, then this happened, then this happened. And it's embarrassing to admit this, but literally we sat there with napkins and pens and she drew out what the arc of a storyline is and what the storyline and how to build on it. And
the coach in me is going to ask you, why is that embarrassing to admit? Well, because I feel like I'd be the same. I'm like, hire someone to help me. I'm like, I don't know.
It's funny to admit. It's not embarrassing, or I wouldn't be admitting. It's funny to me that I'm sitting there. I wrote 400 pages, and then I learned about a storyline and an arc. Right. But then it was like, okay, great. I have these new tools, and I can apply them. So I went back and I edited a few times, and then I did the body of the book with Lydia Yuknovich twice up in Portland, where we went through the whole book. And then back to your original question. then it came to the people in the book.
Right.
So I gave it to each of my 3 daughters, and I gave it to my husband and told them to read it, and said, if there's anything in here that you don't want in here, you tell me and I will take it out. Because again, you're dealing with somebody else's story. And there was nothing. Nobody asked for anything. As a matter of fact, Rose, my youngest, said to me, you know, there's some things in here that I remember differently, but this is your story. So you tell it the way it happened for you, which is
But what
something
about
I really
Nick?
like. Well, what happened with Nick is at the time of the writing and the year of the editing and before the publishing, he wasn't well. I mean, he really was not very
Yeah,
much.
I remember.
Yeah, he wasn't here with us. He was in Nick world. And so, but I felt a moral obligation to at least inform him,
Yeah.
which I did. So he knew about it, and he knew that I had written a book, and I told him, you know, Nick, it's about you and me and the schizophrenia and our whole family. And, you know, he was okay with it. I really didn't want him to read it because I think, honestly, there are things in this book that if he were to wake up tomorrow and not have schizophrenia anymore, he probably wouldn't want out there in the world and would be mad at me. But I decided that if he wakes up tomorrow and doesn't have schizophrenia anymore,
You'll deal with him being mad at you.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah,
So,
I just,
so
yeah.
I just did it, and now he's much better. He's on a new medication called clozapine, and he's with us again. And so we've talked a lot more about it. I don't know that he has the attention span to actually read the book, but he's interested about it, and we talk about it, and he asks me things.
So, you recently were on the news. Tell us about that, Miss Famous person.
Yeah, it was. Well, I guess I did get my moment in the sun, my 15 minutes.
And it was a long clip.
Yeah, it was an 8-minute piece on ABC News with a wonderful guy whose name is Trevor Alt.
But how did that even come about?
They reached out to me. There was an
Amazing.
article in Huffington Post about me and my book right at the beginning when the books came out, the hardback. And so they reached out to me and they wanted to do this interview with Nick and me. They were doing a piece on mental illness and the police and all the violence and horrible shootings and, you know, that whole subject. And they wanted to portray a family. So I told them that, you know, yes, I, of course, would want to do it. I asked Nick and he said he would do it. And I told them, you know, you may get here and he may not want to do it anymore, but they were okay with that. So they flew in from New York and we did this great piece, which you can find if you go on YouTube and just do Trevor Alt and mental illness, it comes up. And it's quite a good piece because it's all about these issues of having community teams that help and augment the police in dealing with people who have serious mental illness.
Yeah, it's terrifying when you, I mean, I'm guessing that it was during Mental Health Awareness Month, May, that you did that, right?
Exactly.
So there is so much discussion in our culture about mental health and the mental health system, rather. So what was your experience?
Well, you know, it's interesting. I had a real awakening, as we all did, over this last year. And now I think about my experience in a different way. And that's what I talked about on the ABC News piece. And I was so happy to have that platform to do it because it's a freaking nightmare dealing with the mental health system. The mental health system is irrevocably broken and needs to be dismantled and recreated. And it's a huge behemoth, and hopefully we'll be able to do it. I work hard every day in that effort. But I thought that all my problems were just because the mental health system is so impossible and mental illness is so impossible. And then George Floyd happened. And then this awakening of somebody who thought she was pretty damn woke to begin with. And what I realize now is that it is such a completely different and more terrible situation for people of color.
Yeah.
And you know, I tell a story in the piece about putting myself between the police and my son and saying, I'm going to stand between you because you're going to have to shoot me before you shoot him. And I realize now, if I was black or brown, I wouldn't have had the luxury to put myself in that position. But I knew as a white woman that that policeman wasn't going to shoot me. So this is something that I've incorporated into my message and everything I'm talking about, because it was so awful for me. And then I think, how would it be without that privilege? without white skin, without my education and my resources and all of that, which is why so many people fail at taking care of their own loved ones.
Wow. Oops. Well, speaking of loved ones, we get a little real motherfucking life, my hashtag in the background. Yeah, this year was, on so many levels, a real reckoning and waking up and also, I mean, I don't think we've at all touched the surface of how it's affected as a whole, I guess, or as our mental health, this experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
So did you blame yourself at all for
Yeah, of course I did. I mean,
dot?
yeah, I mean, don't we as mothers blame ourselves for everything? And it's, and it, not helped at all by the fact that in the history of the treatment of schizophrenia by our culture was something in the 1950s called the refrigerator mom, which is listed in the medical books as the cause of schizophrenia, being that the mother was not loving and warm enough to her child, and that's what caused the schizophrenia. So you wake up one morning to your beloved son disappearing in front of your goddamn eyes, and then you pick up a book to find out what's going on.
I mean,
and
I
they tell
can't
you
right
it's your
now. I'm
fault.
just getting upset. Even
Yeah,
that is
don't get me
just
going. Yeah. So so all of that adds to it. And then of course, as a mother, I mean, we grew them. I grew them in my belly. I just felt it had to be something I did. It was the melatonin I took to sleep when I was pregnant, or it was the one beer I drank before I knew I was pregnant. And, intellectually, I've released myself from this. But honestly, Jen, 20 years into this, I got to tell you, on some deep, deep level, I don't know if I think it's my fault, but I certainly think it's my job to somehow fix it.
Wow. To somehow what, fix it?
Fix it.
What does that mean? What does fixing
Cure
it look
him,
like?
make him better, make it go away.
How's that go? How's that going for you?
Real well.
Yeah.
Well, but you know what? He is.
Can't wait till you write that book.
Oh yeah, that one.
Dear
will sell big
parents
time.
with the schizophrenic child, here's how you fix it.
Yeah.
You don't.
No.
But I mean, I'd argue that, yeah, fixing isn't exactly the word choice I would use, but the book you wrote is definitely contributes to the healing. Not necessarily of his mental illness, but of the caregivers and
all of us, because this is the thing that I keep talking about is the culture. We have a culture, Western culture, which has decided that there is no place for these people in our world.
Yeah.
And that makes me so angry.
It makes me want to cry, levels. And I'm medicated, so wow.
Yeah, I mean, who the hell are we to say? These 1% of the population gets schizophrenia, and there is nowhere for them. They end up, unless they've got a lot of advantages, a lot of good luck, and a pit bull of a mother like me, the de facto mental health facilities are the prisons and the streets. And we as a culture have to change. And that's also why I wrote the book, because I wanted it to be a story that you can see yourself in it. You don't have to have a son with mental illness. It resonates for any parent of a teenager, any family. I mean, it's about our culture, and it's about accepting there are different iterations of what a human being is.
Exactly.
And it's like eugenics to some degree. What right do we as a culture have to say that these people don't belong? I mean, we've created the Disabilities Act so that people with wheelchairs can get into a damn theater. Why the hell don't we have a place for people with schizophrenia?
How old were you when you realized, or he was diagnosed?
Well, it started when he was a teenager. And the problem is, if you're to make a list of red flags for serious mental illness and a list of normal teenage behavior,
I know that's got to be tricky.
The same list.
Yeah.
So I went for a couple of years thinking, okay, well, they're all crazy. I mean, they're all oppositional and irrational and behaving.
I wasn't. I was perfect.
Oh, well, then you were really weird. But But then it just kept getting worse. And then there was a suicide attempt, and he slashed his wrist. And then I knew it was something very serious. But then even then we went for a couple more years treating it as a drug problem. He was diagnosed when he was 20. It took that long.
So how old were you?
If he was 20, I was 45.
Okay. So
no, wait.
What would you
55.
say to your 45-year-old self?
Actually, I was 50, sorry. I would say you're doing fine. Keep doing what you're doing and stop wasting time trying to change things you can't change. And stop wasting time blaming. Just get on with living. Because I don't have huge regrets. I think I did a great job.
Yeah.
I made mistakes, and there are things I definitely wish I had done differently. But overall, I think my worst mistakes were in regard to my other children and not being able to take care of them as much as I could, because there's only one of me.
Yeah.
But I think the point would be to I guess it would be the one thing I would say is just accept it and act accordingly. Stop resisting.
Which is essentially what you're saying to the other mothers and the other fathers and the other caregivers, right? That's your message. So have you accepted it? Are you at a place of peace?
Yeah, I am. I mean, I still have my nights where I howl at the moon, but yes.
Yeah, of course. You're human. I mean, I get that being someone who's deaf without my hearing aids. It's not like every moment I'm like, this is a gift. I still have moments where I'm like, this is motherfucking annoying and this is the worst. And I still accept it. I don't, think that I'm going to wake up tomorrow and have perfect hearing but that doesn't mean we don't have bad days.
But the key to a life and a key to fluidity, I think, and movement is acceptance.
Yes.
Okay, stop resisting. It is this. It's not something else.
It's really, I mean, it is. It's the key to life, isn't it? And
I'll tell you a quick story. I was in the hospital when he had his first psychotic break. And I had my middle daughter, Lucy, with me, and she was managing everything because I was practically psychotic. I was definitely in some sort of fugue state. And I was walking down the hall, and this woman with a big shiny cart with all the towels on it grabbed my arm and pulled me into the janitor's closet. And she sat me down and she said to me, listen, I know what's happening here. My husband is like your son. And she proceeded to give me, a 5-minute primer on how to deal with this. And at the end of it, she took me by the shoulders and she looked me in the eye and she said, this is how it is now, Mija. Stop wasting time pretending it was anything different. And that's informed every day since then.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Really. It's the kindness of strangers.
Oh yeah.
Right. I think that's such a beautiful place to sort of wrap up the interview portion of it, really. This notion, which is like the hardest and easiest thing in the world, right? Of accepting just what is so. What is so. And then from there going, okay, now what?
Yeah. Because there's always, now what? There's always the next moment.
Yeah.
But you get so stuck when you don't. And I mean, again, you don't sit around going, oh, I'm so happy I'm deaf. I would not be so wonderful. And, I don't sit around for a second and think, I'm happy Nick has schizophrenia. I'd peel the skin off my body to make him not have schizophrenia. But I am a way better, more interesting, more patient, more compassionate person than I was before he got sick.
Same.
Yeah.
So there's a gift in it. And I want to be really clear, and I think you and I both have this stance. It's not like, there's necessarily a gift in every shitty thing or every loss or every pain. But sometimes, and it's always in hindsight. It's never in the moment. And anyone who argues with me on that, it's not like something terrible happens or and right away we get the gift. I mean, I don't know. That hasn't happened to me. Maybe I'm going to get someone's going to tweet me how wrong I am. But, accepting. Well, your book and your art is so, you're my favorite. I told you my goal is to have your art all over my walls and Your book is like, always on my bed or my bedside. And I'm so grateful that you allowed yourself to step out of what you thought you were just, good at, and you're, quote unquote, just a painter, and made this beautiful piece of art that was a book.
Well, I am equally grateful to have found you in my life as well, my dear.
Well, you're wonderful. How can people find you? What's the best place?
Well, the best place is, I guess, my website, which is miriam-feldman.com. And there are links to everything there. The book, my art, Nick's art. Nick now has a store on Facebook where he sells prints of his paintings.
Okay, that's amazing
too. Yeah, isn't it?
That is amazing. So Can you find that on your website?
It's all on the website.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And, folks listening, please buy the book from SKYLIT. It's so important to keep our bookstores alive and breathing. So, even if you have it, buy a copy for your friend and spread the word.
It's in paperback, so it will be
yes.
July 15th.
Thank you. What an honor. I can't wait to be in Italy with you on my retreat.
Cannot wait. Thanks.
Thank
Jan.
you. Thank you for your book and your art and your advocacy and your what did you call yourself? Your pit bull energy. Thank you.
All right, I'm coming back in to say our goodbyes. Jen, thank you so much for moderating. You did a fantastic job. Miriam, it was such an honor to hear you speak about your work and your relationship with your son and all of the amazing advocacy you're doing. It's really a cause that's really close to my heart as well. So thank you for that. And I just want to echo what Jen is saying. The book is fantastic. Please order it from SKYLIT. Please buy other books from SKYLIT. We love you. We miss you. We want to see you back in our space. You've been listening to the SKYLIT Books podcast series. My guests today were Miriam Feldman and Jen Pastiloff, and they were discussing Miriam's new memoir, He Came In With It, A Portrait of Motherhood and Madness. Jen and Miriam, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
It's a delight, as always, and I hope we can see you in person in the store in the coming months.
Yes.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. Take care and keep reading. We'll catch you on the flip side.
Thank you for listening to the SKYLIT Books podcast series. Please don't forget to visit our website at skylitbooks.com and make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast for more author talks and bookseller conversations. You can find us on Podbean, iTunes, and Spotify. Stay safe and healthy, and we hope to see you back in our store soon.
I see